Hello and welcome to the 2021 Ashland Candidates Forum. I'm your host for this evening, Makita Keegan. Tonight we'll be hearing from candidates in the school committee and select board races right here in Ashland. Before we start our conversation with our candidates, I'd like to thank our sponsors, We Love Ashland and WACA-TV. I also want to thank our candidates for participating in this evening's forum. A quick note about viewing tonight. We are viewable on cable systems and Facebook, but not on YouTube. So if you have friends who are looking to tune in, please let them know that they can watch on cable and Facebook, but not on YouTube tonight. Getting back to the forum, these forums are critical, but voting is even more so to ensure that your voice is heard. So along those lines, the last day to register to vote in the spring's election is Thursday, May 7th. Early voting will be held at Ashland Town Hall on Wednesday, May 12th, from 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and Saturday, May 15th, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can download a vote by mail application from the town website, but the application must be received no later than 5 p.m. Wednesday, May 12th. And of course, on May 18th, in-person voting takes place at Ashland High School. If you have any more questions or if you need to hear that information again, please don't hesitate to visit the town website. And now for this evening's rules. Questions from the moderator are previously called from topics and questions solicited from the public. You can submit your questions tonight via the WACA Facebook page and by email at candidatesforumashland@gmail.com. We're going to give that info again just in a few minutes, but we're going to roll through the rest of the rules right now. So each question is rotated amongst the candidates in respective response order. Each candidate responds for up to 60 seconds. At the moderator's discretion, there may be an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal following the completion of responses. Rebuttal order is the same as it was for the question. Candidates, please respect the timekeeper's warning and signal to stop. I thank you for your cooperation in advance on this issue. We want to make sure that we keep this event on time and allow for as many questions as possible from the public this evening. Again, just a tip for candidates, don't look away from the timekeeper's warnings because I will ask you to stop when the final stop warning is given. For tonight's contested races, and those are both of the races that we'll be covering this evening, we've asked the candidates to submit their challenge questions, one for each of their challengers. I'll be asking those questions this evening and stating that it's a question for candidate X or Y from another specific candidate. Again, around questions from the audience, questions from the public were collected ahead of time, but if possible, if we have some live questions, we'll definitely get them read in real time off of email and Facebook. Again, that Facebook page is the WACA Facebook page, and by email, it's at candidatesforumashland@gmail.com. Just a note or a couple of notes about questions from the public. Your questions might be edited for clarity and grammar. And we are asking that if you are submitting questions this evening, please just ask one non-multi-part question. One more reminder about questions. Questions must be respectful, on topic, and relevant. And with that, we will get started. So now we're on to candidate introductions. So candidates will have the opportunity to say their full names and what office they are running for, and then we'll start the questions. So let's start with Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Bates, and I'm running for re-election for Ashland School Committee.
Thank you, Kathy. Christina.
Hi, my name is Christina Fatanides, and I'm running for a seat on the Ashland School Committee. I commonly go by Tina, so feel free to call me that.
Thank you, Christina or Tina. And Mark.
Thank you, Makita. My name is Mark Terry, and I'm running for re-election to the Ashland School Committee.
Thanks for your introductions. And now we're off. And we're going to start immediately with those challenge questions. So I'm going to start off with Kathy's questions for Mark and Tina, and they both have different questions each. So Kathy would like to know, since your profession is as a lawyer representing other school committees and districts, How do you keep any potential conflict from affecting your personal role as an Ashland School Committee member?
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy, for the question. So yes, one of the things I do in my professional life is I represent school districts as an attorney. That means I represent them with regard to legal issues, collective bargaining, other things that come up, students' rights. But when I'm a school committee member, my responsibility is to the town of Ashland. And as a school committee member, I work on making policy. I focus on what our charge is. And while I certainly find there are times where my legal background becomes useful, I hope, and I've taken on the role of sort of being a lead negotiator, collective bargaining, which ultimately saves us the cost of using our own attorney. I'm never acting as an attorney. I'm one voice among the 5 school committee members, and I hope that what I'm able to do is bring my access to other information, understanding what's going on in other school districts around the Commonwealth, and offering that to the community as a whole in my role as a school committee member.
Thank you, Mark. Christina, Kathy has a question for you. Since your profession is representing and advocating for special education students and their families, how do you assure the public that wouldn't become your sole focus on the school committee?
Well, thank you. That's a great question, and one I've certainly been asked before. Like Mark, I, work in education issues. I am a lawyer, and I represent families as an advocate, helping them understand and navigate the special education system. But I'm also the parent of 2 students in Ashland, one who receives special education and one who does not. And like any parent or professional who has to balance meeting multiple needs with limited resources, I understand the push and pull of where resources are spent. However, it's important to remember that it's not a this or that issue when looking at meeting students' needs. When we're meeting the needs of special education students, we're in fact meeting the needs of all general education students as well. The needs of special ed and general education students, I think, are very intimately intertwined and equally important. And as a school committee member, I would be advocating for all students with the same passion.
Thank you, Christina. Now it's Christina's turn, as it were, through me, to ask other 2 candidates questions on her behalf. So, Kathy, Christina would like to know, for much of your 9 years on this committee, you have had the benefit of having children in the system and could bring that important perspective. Can you talk about why this was so valuable and how you, as the parent of 3 Ashland High School alumni, plan to continue providing that perspective as Ashland shifts to meet the post-pandemic needs of students and families?
Great. Thank you for that question, Tina. Well, I value it as that it's valuable that I've had 3 students go through the entire Ashland Public School system from preschool all the way to high school. So I had that perspective of the things I had wished they had and loved the things that they did have. So I think now that they are out of the system, of the public school system, I can be a little more objective to the policies and things that we are supporting. But I find that helps my decision making.
Thank you. And Mark, Christina has this question for you. As an attorney working on education issues for many years, can you speak to what knowledge you have brought to the table and the ways in which you will use that knowledge to address the evolving needs of our district?
Yeah, sure. So I think this overlaps a little bit with maybe what I said in response to Kathy's question. My experience as an attorney for 20 years representing other school districts certainly gives me a perspective and access to understanding what's going on, as I said, in the Commonwealth school districts across the state. Some practices that I've heard clients do, I'm like, hey, that's a good idea, and I can bring back. But certainly, directly, sometimes we have issues that come up during our meetings that are compliance issues, and it becomes more efficient, and I can just say, yep, I know how this works. To kind of go back to Kathy's question before, though, I want to be real clear. I'm not the school district's attorney. I don't pretend to be. And so, what I try to do is bring that perspective and bring that experience to what we're doing. And again, a lot of what I've been involved in is trying to negotiate fair deals with our unions along the way, which I think we've been able to do. And that experience, I hope, has really helped us save money on legal fees along the way.
Please stop, Mark. Thank you. And Mark, actually, Mark has questions for Christina and Kathy. So I will start, actually, so I will start with Kathy. So Mark would like to know, how do you feel your experience and credentials compare to that of other candidates?
Well, I'm not a lawyer, so that's one credential I don't have. But I think all 5 members on the committee bring different perspectives. And my perspective, I was a psychology major in college, and I'm a graphic designer. And the qualities that I do bring are I'm a good listener, collaborator, and I pay attention to detail.
Thank you, Kathy. And Mark has a question for Tina, and it is the same question. How do you feel your experience and credentials compared to that of other candidates?
Sure. Well, personally, as I mentioned, I am the parent of 2 kids in the district. Professionally, I'm also, while I currently serve as a special education advocate, I do have an extensive background in education law and advocating for policy and legislative advocacy for a range of different education issues. In comparison to the candidates, in comparison to Mark, I believe our backgrounds are somewhat complementary. We have both worked in the field of education law for many years, but in many different ways. Mark has worked from the perspective of the district. I've worked on behalf of families, and I believe, my knowledge and experience would be a unique voice on the school committee. And Kathy and I obviously have very different professional backgrounds. And Kathy has obviously had the opportunity to, be a member of the school committee for years. I do believe that my knowledge on the ins and outs of education would be a very strong asset to the school committee. I've also had the opportunity to work very collaboratively.
Tina, I'm sorry, you'll
That's
have
okay.
to stop.
Thank
you. All right, so that's it for the challenge questions, but I guess we get into the real challenge questions, which are the questions from the community. And we've just had one come in. So this is a question for everyone. I'll call on folks to answer. So question for the school committee. COVID has shown the world how disadvantaged some of the children in our schools are. Lack of broadband, real need for structure of the classroom, and simple lack of learning with online platforms versus in-person learning. What are your ideas to address and counteract these issues in the future so that we are better prepared for the next pandemic? So, Mark, I'll have you start with that.
Thank you. It's a great question. I mean, obviously, the past year has really been a challenge for everybody. Some students more than others. I think the things that we've learned certainly is, if we ever had to do this again, and I hope, like I think everybody, that we don't ever have to do this again. Certainly, we've got a better place to start in terms of if we had to be remote for some period of time, how to do that better. We've learned a lot about how to do that kind of instruction. Our teachers have now had a year of experience working with that. And while it's no replacement for in-person learning, we're starting from a better place than we were before. Certainly, we're going to spend some time and use some of the funds that are coming from the federal government to try to help students who've had fallen behind to some degree, struggled more over the summer, and provide some supplemental programs for those students. But really going forward, if we hit this issue again, I think we're really just at a better place.
I'm sorry, Mark. I'll have to ask you to stop right there. Thank you. Tina, your thoughts?
Sure. This is a really important question. And I think, the needs that will come up with the next pandemic, hopefully we don't have one anytime soon, but the next emergency maybe, in the district, may be unforeseen like this one was. And I think the best way to prepare to deal with that is really through relationship building and making sure we have strong two-way communication to really understand the needs of our families and our communities, so that when issues do come up and crises do occur, we will have some of those issues on our radar and be able to better work with our families to identify them quickly and resolve them.
Thank you, Christina. Kathy, what do you have to say about this issue?
Yeah, well, those are great answers from Mark and Tina. I think what I could add to that is I was thinking we've learned a lot on how to do remote now. We were thrown into it and had to learn it. So I'd like to see this summer, I'd like to see some debriefing, you know, like what lessons did we learn? What could we keep that worked to enhance our instruction when we're in person? And just to go on what Mark said too, there is, you know, there'll be some work this summer. Dr. Michael Kyra is working on that, you know, where are the gaps and where do we need to fill in?
Thank you, Kathy. We've got another question that's come in. And again, I'll have all of you answer this one. How do you view the music and arts programs in the Ashland Public Schools? What growth/improvements would you support as an Ashland School Committee member? So, Kathy, I'd like you to start with that one.
Sure, thanks. Thanks for that question. I love, you know, the arts and the music. Well, I think we do a good job of providing arts and music, but I would love to see discussion in our budget talks where we could expand and enhance those programs, the arts and the music, and all the electives that we offer.
Thank you, Kathy. Mark, can you answer that question, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, certainly a big believer in supporting our arts programs and would love to see them, like Kathy, expand. I think we've made progress over the last few years in being able to expand some elective offerings at the high school. And I'd like to be able to see that continue as well. I'll be honest with you, I don't have children who are particularly drawn to the arts in high school yet. My daughter might be an arts student when she gets there in a couple of years. So I don't have an intimate familiarity with all the programs that we do offer, but I think our commitment to offering solid arts programs is there as a committee. And I'd certainly love to see us be able to expand on that going forward.
Thanks, Mark. Christina.
Thank you. This is a great question. Actually, something I've started to talk to many parents in the district about. I, think it would be wonderful to see a growth in our arts programming, both in terms of the courses we offer, but also in terms of the extracurricular opportunities for students who are interested in the arts. And, when I say arts, I'm talking about, actual art, music, theater, band, but also industrial arts, technology arts. It's the whole creative realm to really give our students the opportunity to explore those areas and really develop their skills. I also think it would be really exciting to have someone at the administrative level, similar to the athletic director, that would be able to bring the voice and importance of this broad category of arts to the table in an administrative way as well. That's not something we have in our district. Some districts do. And I think it would be really exciting to see if there's a space for that here in Ashland as well.
Thank you, Tina. Another question actually sort of dovetails a little bit about some of the things we've been talking about this evening. If you're elected, how might you solicit input or feedback from residents when you're faced with issues benefiting for more input? So, Mark, can you answer that first?
Yeah, sure. This is actually touches on something I've been passionate about for 6 years. And when I first got on the school committee, one of the things that I was really concerned about was how we communicate. And that was largely about sort of inconsistency. And so driving that forward, we've made several efforts over the last several years to improve how we communicate. Some are subtle, but one of the things we're actually literally doing right now, and we'll be talking about, I think at our next meeting on May 6th, is a communications audit that we've had done. So one of the things that I'm hoping comes out of that is a whole set of advice and guidance from the consultant we're working with as to how we can do better. The initial survey indicated people are generally pretty happy with the level of communication they get from the district, but see some inconsistency. And I think we really need to do more outreach to work with that model. And one of the things we're looking at is potentially looking at having a communications director come on and really try to be the
I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry. We're going to have to leave it there. Kathy, go ahead.
Well, let me finish Mark's thought. That is something, when I've been on the school committee, that we've always been working on communications, and we've tried to, improve each year. We have a Facebook page, we have a Twitter page, trying to get our message out there, trying to solicit, input as to how we could do better. So like Mark just said, we have embarked on a communications audit, and we're waiting to get those results. So I think that is going to be, we're going to get some really good information from that survey and the audit results.
Thanks, Kathy. Christina?
Yeah, thank you. Communication is certainly an issue that's, on the forefront of a lot of people's minds. And I'm really happy to see the district putting, effort into bettering communication and, bringing in the auditors and whatnot. I think that will be a really important first step. I was able to attend one of the meetings that they had with the auditors to solicit information from the community. And I was sad to see that there were very few people who were able to participate, but I think it was a good conversation. I would really like to see communication in the district grow, to truly engage families, to be partners in learning. I think the district does a good job of sharing information on many platforms now, but I would really love to see it grow to be more of kind of a back and forth, and really, communication is a two-way street. And so right now there's very little space for that two-way communication and discussion. And I would love to see the opportunity for that grow.
Nikita,
Thank
could I
you.
just add one quick little rebuttal point?
Yes, you may. You have 30
Thank you.
seconds.
I won't even take that long. I think one of the positive things that's come out of all the Zoom meetings is we have greater engagement in our school committee meetings. And that's something the committee has really appreciated. And we hope that we'll be able to continue that even when we presumably get back to in-person meetings. So I really appreciate the community has been more engaged this year with what we're doing. And I hope that that continues on the community side too. Thank you.
Next question is, again, for all of you. What are, in your opinion, some of the most pressing policy issues that the school committee will be coming across during the upcoming school year? Tina, I'd like to start with you.
Sure. Well, obviously, pivoting to meet the needs of students in, the continuing COVID world that we're living in, and moving into the post-COVID world. I think we don't know what student needs in terms of academic or emotional needs are fully going to be yet. So, really being in tune to student and family needs, and also, having the flexibility to pivot to meet those needs. That, coupled with some initiatives that the district is already focusing on, social emotional learning, but also racial equity initiatives, I think are going to be incredibly important in terms of moving forward. And I'm encouraged to see the district laying some really great groundwork for both of those important issues. And I look forward to seeing those initiatives move forward. I think I could bring some very helpful experience to the discussion, as I've dealt with both of those issues in my professional career as well.
Thank you, Christina. Mark, I'd like you to go ahead and answer that question next.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with Tina on this. Certainly, that I think the number one thing that I see us pressing forward on with, and we have been this year, I think it's one of the things that's been in the background, but will become certainly a topic of discussion over the summer and planning for next year is our efforts to become an anti-racist school district. It's not something that I think has drawn enough attention. That's because, going back to communication, we haven't communicated enough about it, but there's a lot of work going on at the high school in particular about trying to create a curriculum that represents the diversity of Ashland, has works that are, and we've been working on this for a while, but we're doing more to try to make sure all the work that people are studying represents different perspectives. And I know Tina's been involved with the area. I've recently been engaged with them as the school committee representative, but I think that's, to me, that is probably one of the biggest pushes that we'll see over the next few years for the Ashland schools.
Stop. I'm sorry, Mark.
I finished.
Right under the wire. Kathy.
Yeah, could you just repeat the original question?
Sure. What are, in your opinion, some of the most pressing policy issues that the school committee will be coming across during the upcoming school year?
Yeah, we've the anti-racist task force that we pulled together last summer and the work that they've been doing. They started at the high school, and we've got a mid-year update from that, the consultants that are working with us. That's probably the most pressing policy need I see right there with, the curriculum, and being on the policy subcommittee. I've done a lot of work with the policies that we have in hand already, and reworking them and revisiting them and bringing back ideas to the full school committee.
Thank you, Kathy. Got another question coming in right now, and it is about Zoom, the aforementioned Zoom. And I'll have everyone chime in on this one as well. Since the community has been more engaged in Zoom meetings, would you each try to develop a way for folks to attend school committee meetings in person and also online, as many folks simply can't come to in-person meetings? So, Mark, why don't you start with that one?
Yeah, so I mean, Zoom is like a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, we're all now, it's kept us going, but we're all fed up with it. Certainly happy to be here tonight, of course, but I think as I said before, it certainly has given us an ability to communicate with people who have never been able to come to school committee meetings. At the same time, in my view, school committee meetings really function better when we can all be in a room. And I think there's a place for that. So I absolutely would love to see us come up with a way to engage with the public the way that we have been able to through Zoom. And I don't know what the technological answer to that is. There also is open meeting law issues related to that the state has to kind of wrestle with and give us some permission to keep doing that. But I think the level of engagement we've had this year has been great. I'd love to see it continue.
Thank you, Mark. Kathy.
Yeah, I really like Zoom. I like how it has opened it up to many more people, that people might not travel out during the night to come down to a school committee meeting to participate, but it's easy for them to participate from home on their laptop. So again, like Mark, I would like to see it, could we continue it? Do we do a hybrid thing, or do we have our in-person meetings, which is critical when the 5 of us can sit and talk? But maybe there's a way to combine it, having people on Zoom and on WACA and, all the technology. So I'd like to explore that.
Thank you, Kathy. Christina.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any way that opens the doors for people to participate more in the activities of the school committee would be a great thing. Like Mark mentioned, obviously the open meeting laws are a piece of the puzzle, though I think those only apply to the members and actually having the meeting. And I think, public comment and public involvement in the meetings is definitely more flexible. And so I would love to see, different opportunities explored to be able to allow, I know just for myself, as a working parent, sometimes the only way I can participate in meetings, of the school committee or otherwise is because I'm able to log on from my kitchen after I feed my kids dinner and, shuffle them here, there, and everywhere. So it's certainly the convenience of it is great. And I would love to see that accessibility continue, because that's really what it is an accessibility issue.
Thank you, Tina. Next question, a little bit like one we had earlier, but in your opinion, what should be the top budget priorities for Ashland Public Schools for the upcoming year, and why? And Kathy, I'm going to start with you on that one.
Great. Yes, thank you. I would like to see the last few budgets. I think we've done a good job supporting, the special education and supporting that. I'd like to see, in addition to that, the next thing, I know the classroom sizes in the middle school are really getting large and they're tight. So I'd like to see us do something about that. And I'd also like to still explore more electives at the high school, more enrichment for the high school students and the other schools too.
Thank you, Kathy. Christina.
Thank you. I think Kathy brought up some really great points, and to piggyback on that, being a member of the middle school site council, I think that the top of mind for me is the size of the classes, specifically at the middle school. And I think, it's been a priority of Mr. DiGirolamo there to bring on additional teachers to keep class sizes low. And so I'd love to see that be a part of the budget. Also increasing kind of the expansion of social emotional learning, and really rather than keeping it too siloed in the guidance department. I'd love to see that really expanded and continue to expand, because I know that's an initiative of the district, to become more of the culture of the school, and really to kind of look closely at what student needs are post COVID. I think there's going to have to be some flexibility built in to meet those needs, because we're not quite sure exactly what they're going to look like yet.
Makita, you were the first to mute yourself.
Indeed. It's it's a Zoom meeting when live TV. Okay, so thank you, Tina. Mark, why don't you go ahead and answer that question?
Yeah, I actually tend to agree pretty strongly with what both Tina and Kathy said. The first thing that came to my mind was the middle school class size, and I know Mr. Adams is going to make a presentation to us about how to address that over for next year, and try to use some of the stimulus funds that we're getting from the federal government to try to balance that out and transition through this period where we have really large class sizes all at the middle school. So I think that's probably number one. Number two, and I think is related to that, is really helping students with however you want to frame it, loss, the loss of the time, where kids are they behind? And we talked a little bit about summer programming, but I think that's something that's going to continue for a while. It's not like you're going to be able to make up for everything that was missed in 2021 in 3 months and you're all done. And then the last thing is that I'd really like to see us be able to finally integrate our SEL program K to 12 or pre-K to 12. Right now, it's kind of operating at the high school level, and I think we need to move to the next level.
I'm sorry, Mark. I'll have to hold that thought right there. So we do have another question that came in live, and I'll have, again, all three of you answer this. So I'll read this off right now. Focusing on curriculum that promotes anti-racism is a great start. How can our district increase connectivity and implement strategies to address inequities more coherently found across academics, behavior, attendance, school climate, SEL, teacher perceptions, and family engagement? So they're looking to get your opinions on strategies to address all of those issues. And Tina, I'm going to start with you on that.
Sure. I think the place to start, actually, very encouragingly, is something that the district is already planning to do with an equity audit. This is something that, I had the opportunity to volunteer with the area group, Ashland Residents for Equity in Action. And one of the things that the education subcommittee there has talked about was an equity audit. And really, we can't fix or make better what we don't acknowledge is there. And so really kind of starting by looking at where are the inequities in our system, and what do we need to deal with? And, that's something that the district has also recognized as a need. And I look forward to seeing that move forward. I think, generally increasing engagement by increasing outreach and really learning how to connect with families who may connect differently than via email or Facebook. And I think the partnership with area is a really great way to start. And I'd like to see those partnerships continue to grow to reach more families and really be able to address those.
I'm sorry, Tina, I'm going to have to ask you to leave it there. Thank you. Mark.
Thank you. So I think the equity audit obviously is a work in progress, and that's something I'm really pleased that we've started. I think the concept of partnerships like the one that we've started with area, or they've started with us, I'm going to give that group a lot of credit for the work they're doing to really start looking at our practices. What are we doing in terms of trying to create a better climate? And I'll remind people, Ashland was recognized several years ago at the high school level for having one of the top climates in the school among school districts in the state. So, we're doing a good job. We know we can do more. And I think one of those things that we're working on is also trying to hire more people of color. because there's great information out there that suggests that students need to connect to people that look like them, and it helps them learn. So, this is a topic we could talk on for forever. But I think those are some of the things that we can start to work on and try to partner with these other organizations.
I'm sorry, Mark. I'm sorry, Mark. That's your time. Thank you. Kathy.
Yeah, just to maybe round out the conversation with Tina and Mark. Mark is our liaison, our new liaison to the area group. And so I look forward to his reporting back to the full committee and the information that comes back from the audit. I'd like to see, this on, future agendas of the school committee. And it's definitely would be a great topic for school committee summer workshop too, to expand that and explore that.
Thank you. Okay. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about your individual working styles. Again, this is a question for all of you. In what kind of an environment do you do your best work? Teamwork, lots of little crises, infrequent but significant issues, et cetera, et cetera. Frequent longer meetings, frequent shorter meetings. Give us a little insight into that. And so I will ask Mark to start that off for us.
That's an interesting one. I didn't think we were gonna get something like that. I guess the way I think about it is I feel like I learn best when I have the opportunity to listen the most. And so I think that, our school committee, fortunately, we have what I consider to be a very high functioning school committee. People are respectful, they listen, and they're interested always in doing what's best for kids. We haven't said that phrase yet, but it really is kind of it should be the tagline for every school committee. It's we're always doing what's best for kids. And I think our committee has historically done that really well. But I think that's because we all listen to each other and we look for the best idea. So, I feel like I'm most effective when I can be in a collaborative environment where I can sit and talk to people and ask questions, come to understand different perspectives, and then kind of work towards a solution. And not really somebody who's driven by I've got the idea, let's go do this, and not listen to anybody else. So I guess that's how I'd approach that question.
Thank you, Mark. Kathy.
Yes, thank you. I work best in a collaborative atmosphere. I like to be able to meet with people, ask them questions, get their perspective on things, and then give my ideas and my thoughts, and then collectively we come up with a solution. I think that works best. And I like Mark, I'm not one to be like, I've got the greatest idea, but I like listening to everybody else and then coming together and making a decision.
Thank you, Kathy. Christina.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all seem to have similar work styles, because I would say something similar. I'm very much a collaborator. I think the most successful work environments I've had throughout my career have been collaborative work environments where stakeholders on different issues are brought together to discuss issues, and there's a lot of active listening and engagement with the people involved, and also like Mark said, learning from one another. I think that's a very important part of collaboration and really listening to one another, to come up with the best solutions, to really understand all of the different perspectives from the different stakeholders that are involved. I've had the opportunity to do that a lot in my career. And, like I said, those are the environments that I find the most success in, and I think are the best at building relationships to allow work to move forward in a more cooperative way.
Thank you, Christina. Next question that we have is, how do you think the pandemic has affected the school committee's ability to accomplish goals? And Kathy, I'll have you start with that.
All right.
But you'll have to unmute yourself.
I'm trying to unmute, sorry there. How has it affected our goals? Well, I think in a way, the pandemic, we've been meeting weekly, every Friday morning, in addition to our every other week meetings. So I think in a way, it's actually kind of brought us closer together. And we've worked harder at our goals because we're meeting more frequently.
Okay, thank you. Tina, I'm going to ask the question to you. How do you think the pandemic has affected the school's committee's ability to accomplish its goals?
Sure. Well, kind of in thinking of pre-pandemic goals that might have been on the table for the school committee, I think the pandemic certainly put things on hold, and understandably so. It was a crisis that needed to be dealt with. And so things, one thing that comes to mind is, kind of the shift in programming at Mendez. Some of that work has been put on hold because of the pandemic. Obviously, the assumption is that things will be picked back up as there is space and time to do it. But when a crisis occurs, issues need to be triaged. And I think, the committee did a good job in prioritizing the needs due to COVID and really taking the time to focus on those. But there were things that, that had to go to the back burner.
Thank you, Christina. Mark.
Yeah, it's great. I think it's a great question. I guess to my way of thinking, it certainly shifted goals. I mean, the things that we were focused on heading into last March, meaning March of 20, all of a sudden took a change into just sort of the very basics of how we providing the very basic of education and keeping kids engaged. That was really last spring. Was how do we keep kids engaged when nobody knew what to do with remote? And I hope this year has been better. It certainly hasn't been perfect. But I think at the same time, there's been things that have been going on towards our goals that we need to do a better job publicizing. We touched on it before about the work in our anti-racist, our goal of becoming an anti-racist school district. I also think in some ways it shifted goals, but in a positive way. One of the things we've talked about for years is our technology platform. All of a sudden we had federal money come in and we could buy Chromebooks for everybody. And so we now are more than a one-to-one school district in terms of one device per one student.
I'm sorry, Mark. You'll have to leave your thoughts there on that question. But we do have another question that's come in that I'd like everyone to answer. Question is, what are your feelings on standardized testing like MCAS? Christina, I'd like you to start with that one.
That's a really good question. In a year like this year, I'm not a fan of MCAS. I don't love MCAS in general. I think that it sometimes can take time away in class to prepare for MCAS, to take the MCAS. I would rather see the teachers be able to use their time more creatively and engage with their students in the ways that we know that they love to. But standardized testing does have a place in school funding, in school accreditation, and in evaluation. And unfortunately, it is a requirement by both the federal and state government. So our participation as a district in that standardized testing isn't something that we can just say, no, we're not going to do. But I don't love them all the time. I definitely see the downfall of having to do them, but they do have their place.
Thank you, Christina. Kathy.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I agree with Tina. I'm not crazy about MCAS, but it is the law, so we do have to obviously administer them. We need a way to measure success for our students, but I do worry that the MCAS takes away from other types of learning. So we do have to do it, but I would be open to exploring other ways to measure success for our students.
Thank you, Kathy. Mark.
Yeah, I have very mixed feelings about the MCAS too, as I think it sounds like Tina and Kathy do. On the one hand, certainly we do get information that's useful. One of the things that helps us understand is how our students are growing from year to year. And that also provides information that helps us understand where a particular student has excelled or struggled and how to meet that student where they are. So there's some value to it. I shouldn't use the word hate, but I'm going to. I hate the amount of time that's committed to it. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that in a 180-day school year, we're losing as much time as we do to administering the MCAS. And that has got to change. You're just not spending as much time on teaching and learning if you're spending it on testing. So somewhere along the way, they got to fix that. And there was an original commitment to get that feedback data to be usable a lot faster. And they haven't made good on that at the state level.
Thank you, Mark. I think we have time for one more question that's coming from our viewers live. So the question is, it's clear that the administration is always looking for better communications. What does this mean to you? And do you have any thoughts on communications challenges or solutions? So Kathy, can you start with that one?
Well, I think we kind of touched upon this earlier with the communications and the communication audit that we're going through right now. So I am looking forward to the results of that and how we can improve our communications out to, hard to reach parents and guardians if we're not already reaching them, and how better to expand the tools that we are using and what else we could deploy.
Thanks, Kathy. Mark, I know we already covered some of this ground, but do you have any additional thoughts on that as per the viewer question?
Yeah, I think the thing that I'd like to see us improve on is certainly outreach, and we talked about partnerships in a different context. That's been something we've been working on for several years, and it's tough because one of the things we're finding is that there are, quite frankly, a number of community members that don't want to be communicated with, and won't even read the communications that do come to them. But I think the goal from my perspective going forward really is to streamline things, to make it simpler, clearer, more consistent. I'm, as a parent, I see the emails that go home to my kids. I see all of them in all the schools, even though I don't have kids in all the schools, and they're different. And, they overlap. There's some of them are easy to read, some of them aren't. And I think we got to start by at least working on being more consistent in how we communicate so that people know where to expect valuable information and are looking for that. And I think that'll improve sort of the overall relationship there.
Thank you, Mark. Again, Christina, we've covered this ground a little bit more, but do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we have talked about this a bit, and like I said, I would really like to see communication in the district grow to truly engage families as partners in their children's learning. I think that there is a lot of information sharing that happens with the district, but there's very little space for a real open back and forth and that kind of reciprocal relationship building. And I would love to see, maybe some more community interactions, the opportunity for, like we've had in the past, and hopefully in a post-COVID world, some of this will continue, some of the community book reads, the courageous conversations, the opportunities like that, and hopefully expand upon that into other opportunities for parents and others in the community to truly engage with members of both the administration and the school committee to build those stronger relationships. Stronger relationships often foster greater communication and collaboration, and I would love to see that happen.
Thank you, Christina. And we have come up on our time. So at this point in our forum, I'd like to have the candidates give their closing statements. Closing statements will be 1 minute each, and we're going to start with you, Mark.
Thank you, Makita, and thank you, Tina and Kathy, for participating, and thanks to everybody who's either asked a question or is listening at home. I hope everybody gets out and votes. I guess I'd like to just briefly close with sort of talking about the different perspectives I think I bring to the school committee and some of the reasons I think why I hope people will support me. One is I am a practicing school attorney, so I really have my fingers into the school work at all levels. And that's something that just provides a different perspective. I have 2 children in the school system now, one in the middle school and one in the high school, and certainly seeing how our decisions affect them, if they affect all our kids, is really important, right? It's a perspective. I also have the opportunity now to serve on the Mass Association of School Committees Board of Directors, which I think gives Ashland another voice at the advocacy table on a statewide level. So I'll close by just simply asking for one of your 2 votes on May 18th, 12th, or 15th,
Thank you,
whichever
Mark.
day you decide to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Christina.
Yes, thank you, Makita, and thank you to all the people who put so much time and effort into organizing this, and for those who submitted such great questions. Thank you to Mark and Kathy for a great discussion. I just want to share that my professional role has always been to empower families and give a voice to students. And if I was elected to the school committee, that's what I would do as a member of the school committee as well. I do believe that it's important for each member of the school committee to bring relevant experience or perspective to the table, either as a parent or a professional, preferably both. And you would have both with me. My knowledge and experience with education policy and advocacy on behalf of families would be a very unique and valuable perspective to add to the school committee, one that I believe would really complement the existing expertise of the other members. And as a mom of two great kids, my role has always been to look out for them and to advocate for their interests. And as a member of the school committee, I would be honored to do that for all of our kids.
Thank you, Christina. And Kathy.
Yes, thank you. Again, I'd like to thank you, Makita, for hosting, and for the organizers giving us this opportunity to meet and show the Ashland residents who we are. Thank you, Mark and Tina. I just wanted to leave the Ashland residents with this, that I've, in my 9 years of being on the school committee, I wanted to remind them that in the beginning, I was on the committee that supported 2 critical financial policies that have led to AAA rating in our town. I was on the committee when we hired Jim. Prior to that, we had many school superintendents coming through. And I like to think I'm a contributing member, and I'd like to continue that momentum and continue with the stability and the forward progress of our schools. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And thank you to all the candidates for school committee that have joined us tonight. Thank you for stepping up and running for office and electing to or trying to serve the community in this capacity. I want to thank all the folks who out there submitted questions for this evening. Thank you for keeping this a very lively discussion. Coming up next, we have our candidates forum for select board. So please stay tuned. We're going to go on a little break. And again, thank you again to our candidates. Thanks to our audience. And we'll be back in a little bit. Hello and welcome back to the 2021 Ashland Candidates Forum. I'm your host, Makita Keegan. In this part of the program, we'll be hearing from candidates from our select board race right here in Ashland. Before we start our conversation with our candidates, I do want to thank our sponsors, We Love Ashland and WACA-TV. I also want to thank our candidates for participating this evening. A note about viewing tonight, if you're watching this live, we are viewable on cable systems and on Facebook, but not on YouTube. So if you have friends or fans who are looking to tune in, please let them know that they could do so on cable and Facebook, but not on YouTube tonight. And getting back to the forum, these forums are very critical, but voting is even more so to make sure that your voice is heard. So along those lines, the last day to register for this election is Thursday, May 7th. Early voting will be held at Ashland Town Hall on Wednesday, May 12th from 9 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. And then on Saturday, from May 15th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can go ahead and download a vote by mail application from the town website, but that application must be received back no later than 5 p.m. on Wednesday, May 12th. And of course, on May 18th, in-person voting takes place at Ashland High School. If anything I said went by a little bit too quickly for you, don't worry about it. All that information is posted on the town website. Now let's talk a little bit about this evening's question and answer format. Questions from the moderator are previously culled from topics and questions solicited from the public. You can also, if you're watching this live, you can also submit questions this evening via the WACA Facebook page and by email at candidatesforumashland@gmail.com. Don't worry, I'll give that info again in a few minutes after I roll through some of the other format issues. So each question is rotated among the candidates with respect to response order. Each candidate responds for up to 60 seconds. At the moderator's discretion, there may be an opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal following the completion of responses. Rebuttal order is the same as it was for question. Candidates, please respect the timekeeper's warnings and signals to stop. I thank all of you for your cooperation in advance on this issue. Just want to make sure that we keep the event on time and, more important, to allow for as many questions as possible for the public. So don't look away from the timekeeper's warnings. And if you do and you miss the stop signal, I will ask you to stop verbally. For tonight's contested races, we're asking that the candidates, we've asked the candidates to submit challenge questions in advance, one for each of their challengers. I will be asking those questions on the candidates' behalfs, stating that it's a question for candidate X or Y from another specific candidate. Getting back to taking questions from the audience this evening, again, we did get some questions in advance, but if you want to submit a question this evening during the broadcast, if you're watching this live, you could submit a question on the WACA Facebook page and by email at candidatesforumashland@gmail.com. Just a note about the question submissions. They might be edited for clarity and grammar, and we are asking questioners to ask only one non-multi-part question. And one other reminder on the questions, if you're thinking about submitting one this evening, make sure that they are respectful, on topic, and relevant. Now I'd like to go ahead and let the candidates introduce themselves. I'll be calling them out one by one, and they will state their name and the office that they are running for. And so we are going to start with Yolanda. Please introduce yourself.
Good evening. Thank you, Makita. My name is Yolanda Greaves, and I am running for re-election to the Ashland Select Board.
Thank you. Pamela.
Hi, my name is Pamela McQuillan. I am running for one of the 2 open seats on the Select Board. Informally, I go by Pam, so feel free to call me that.
Thank you, Pam. And Robert.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Scher. I'm running for re-election to the Ashland Select Board. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And we can call you Rob, Robert?
Yes.
All right, great. So we have had quite a few questions coming in, and I do want to get to those. But before I get to those, I would like to start with the challenge questions straight away. So, and I'd like to start with Yolanda's questions for Pam and Rob. So, Pam, Yolanda would like to ask this question. Ashland has used eminent domain to further various projects. It is the job of the Select Board to determine when and if it is the correct path forward. What are your thoughts on how eminent domain should be used and why?
I think certainly whenever you're going to use eminent domain, you should be considering the effects that that will have on the community members. Specifically, we're taking by eminent domain a parcel on Independence right now, and we have to consider the impact that that will have on the residents that when we install the water pump, the impact that that will have on the community. So I think if you're going to be using eminent domain, there's definitely a time and a place for it, but all of the considerations need to be made before you push a vote forward.
Thank you, Pam. Rob, Yolanda has a question for you. What is a project that you wanted to accomplish that is not yet completed that you want to see through and why?
Well, I think the first one that occurs to me, of course, is the Upper Charles Trail, which has been going on for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. Yolanda was among the Select Board members who named me to that committee, and it used to say until completion, but that was a pretty long sentence. But I would say, the Upper Charles Trail, which is a great concept, running through the town, tying it together, giving people, families, everyone a safe way to travel besides being on car. And, so I would think that's the big, and, I'm happy to say that this summer we're actually starting to build a segment of it with a lot of support from a lot of people and a lot of work. So thank you. So that's great. And that's my project, I would say.
Thank you, Rob. And Rob, you have some questions for your fellow candidates here. So I'm going to ask your questions, and I'm going to start with Pam. So Pam, Rob wants to know, or rather, Rob says, I feel that climate change is one of the great issues of our time. As a Select Board member, what measures would you take to address climate change?
Sure. So as you know, Ashland has a great program going on where we are attempting to go green. So being a member of the Select Board, whenever a developer comes before the board and asks to develop in our community, I would be requiring some type of renewable energy source, whether that is solar panels or what have you, or electric heat that will move us towards Ashland's goal of being green.
Thank you, Pam. Yolanda, Rob has a question for you. Development has been proceeding in Ashland and we are approaching build out. Do you favor completing a strategic plan for the town? And if so, how do you propose to restart or finish this process?
Well, thank you for that question. I am a huge proponent of trying to finish a comprehensive plan, a strategic plan for our community. Many years ago, I was actually a chair of a comprehensive plan committee. We did about 2 years of work and then it got stalled due to various reasons. It was under the direction of the planning board. A couple years later, we gave the initiative to Michael Herbert, our town manager, and he did a couple of years of work and he is very close to completing that. And currently as chair, I have encouraged him to put that back on his plate. And I am hoping that with the little bit of work that still needs to be done, it can be brought to the community and voted on in the very near future.
Thank you. So now we have some questions from Pam to Rob and Yolanda. So Rob, Pam wants to know, what is your opinion, if any, on revisiting the November 2018 town vote for the ban of recreational and adult use marijuana?
Oh, thank you for that question. Well, at the time, the select board made a key vote on that. And at that time, I voted in the affirmative to allow a properly licensed and regulated facility. I think if there was another project that was appropriate that came before us, I don't see a reason to change my position on that. Each of these projects would have to be carefully considered, but I think the right kind of project would get my approval again.
Thank you. And Yolanda, Pam would like to know, are you satisfied with the amount of development in Ashland?
The question, am I satisfied with the amount of development in Ashland? I think we are always looking at what we have available for land and how we can use any land that is still open and available for development. I think that we need to look at, if a developer comes in, that we can work with them for increasing our affordable housing number, as well as increasing our retail space availability. Whether I'm happy with the amount of development, it depends on what's going on. I don't know that it's something I can be happy or not happy for. I support development. I support developers working with us and for the town to work with developers to create projects that are beneficial to Ashland.
Thank you. So now we've got some questions that we'd like all of you to address. So I will start with one that came in a little earlier. This one is, thank you for improving greater transparency in how Ashland government works. As part of this greater transparency, why aren't all the select board meetings taped for WACA-TV? And Rob, why don't you start with that one?
I thought they are. So
yeah.
So I would, if they're not, they certainly should be. And I believe they're all available live stream. Maybe there's some hiccups, but they're televised live and then recorded. And if they're not, they should be. So people should be able to go and look them up, just like they can look up town meeting. I think that's an important thing as well. So, you know, if they're not being taped and not available, we should look into that and fix that.
Thanks, Rob. Yolanda?
So again, I mean, not much of a different response than Rob. The majority of our meetings, even though there are Zoom, are being broadcast via WACA-TV. The only thing I would say is we do have what we call board retreats, where we spend time really, diving into some really deep discussions that then are not recorded. But most of our select board meetings are available via WACA-TV. They're broadcast live most of the time, and they are recorded and then shown. And so people may need to go to the WACA channel and find out when they're rebroadcast.
Thank you, Yolanda. Pam, your thoughts?
Sure. I will, I'll echo what Rob and Yolanda said as well. The select board is subject to the open meeting laws. So every meeting should be taped and minutes taken and published publicly. So if they're not, that's certainly something that we should address, and something that I would definitely take on coming on to the select board to be sure that we're being as transparent as we possibly can with our communication and the meetings that we're putting forth.
Thank you. We've got another question here. It's about beautification. The question is, when are we going to properly design, fund, manage, and maintain Ashland beautification projects so that we meet the goals of the citizenry and economic development? To have appealing, beautiful places so that we can attract businesses and customers to Ashland. So Pam, I'd like you to start with that one.
Sure. So right now we are working on a downtown revitalization plan, but I would welcome any citizens to reach out to, if I become a select board member. The board has done a good job, I would say, of trying to get citizens engaged, but I think there's certainly room for improvement. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that I would be a voice for the citizens of Ashland as far as what they see as beautification or what they want to see coming in. And I think maybe the Valentine Estate would be a good place for us to start.
Thank you. Rob.
Yeah, I think so. I would, we have an economic development officer who, would be very interested in hearing about your people's perceptions of areas that they think is a drag or an issue. I would say, send an email to the select board about specific issues that you may have, because I think we're all of the perspective that we need to have an attractive town and take on, if there's certain problem areas that have been overlooked, feel free to come to a select board meeting and talk about a specific issue, and communicate with us, and people will follow up, because it's an important issue to all of us if you're seeing an issue or a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Yolanda.
Makita, would you mind just repeating the whole question? I don't know that I got all of it. I want to make sure I answer it thoroughly.
Absolutely. When are we going to properly design, fund, manage, and maintain Ashland beautification projects so that we meet the goals of both the citizenry and economic development to have appealing, beautiful places so that we can attract businesses and customers to Ashland?
It's such a great question. And what's great is some of this work is already being done. It's just, I remember having designed charrettes for the downtown area. We had people come and talk to us about what kind of sidewalks, what kinds of benches, and then it was a matter of getting funding in place, and pretty soon shovels in the ground will happen to improve downtown. And then we'll have funding in place to maintain that revitalization that has gotten done. Cadillac Paint is another great project on the other side of town. We were able to get some funding from the federal government and the state government to take down those buildings And pretty soon we're going to be working with a few people who have designs and who have ideas, and we're going to get that park created. So those are just two examples of some of the work that we've already done. And then of course we need to work together to make sure we have it in our capital projects and in our general funding to maintain the work that we do.
So, thank you, Yolanda. Okay, we are getting quite a few questions on one issue. So I'm going to ask one of these questions. I think that might be phrased better, but there are a few of these requests coming in. So I'd like to hear everyone respond to this issue. Can you discuss building codes or what allows builders to build so close to the street, like on Main Street or 126? Some residents prefer a grassier border. So there are a couple of questions about buildings. You know, why do new buildings come so close to the street? There's little room for people. Yolanda, I'd like you to start with that if you can.
Thank you, Makita. That's an interesting question in that the design and how people want buildings available has changed. Certainly when we're in a more rural setting, people wanted the buildings a little further back. And on a Route 126, it was the buildings would be further back and the parking would be in front. As you look at smart growth and new ways of developing, the idea is that the building is a little bit closer to the street and the parking goes in back so that the accessibility through the sidewalks, through walking, through bike paths is right there. And that if there are cars, they're in back of the building. And as people come by it, they can potentially have more access and walk in. And there's more I could go, but I'm almost out of time. But so those are some of the reasons. And then our planning board is working with some of those changes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Pam.
So as far as buildings being too close to the street, I think that it's a common complaint that we get. The building that is downtown that is looming over the sidewalk. I think that's what this question is addressing. I would be sure as a select board member to work with our planning board, work closely with the developer, even once the plans have been approved, once we move forward, the building has begun, continue to follow up with the developer, make sure that these plans are staying on track. I think that sometimes projects get a little bit off track. We lose sight of them, they fall through the cracks. But as a select board member, I would make sure that we're following up on the projects that we're currently undertaking and that they don't fall through the cracks.
Thank you, Pam. Rob.
Yeah, I think people are reassessing, in light of some events. And personally, I thought that building was too close, and we should have, frankly, taken stronger action to intervene there, which we decided not to do. The majority of the board decided not to do. But it is true that you have smart growth and higher density, but one of the things you need to look at is, does it fit in characteristics of the place that it's putting? I think with downtown, it has a very traditional look and feel to it, and people want to retain that. So it's a very special place. So we have to be very careful of that. And as Yolanda mentioned, the planning board is reviewing the zoning, and hopefully it will go in a better direction. I think the zoning left some holes in it, and developer took advantage of it, and that was unfortunate. But hopefully we'll be able to fix that moving forward.
Thank you, Rob. Got
Makita,
another. Yep.
Real quick, can I just add, if you don't mind?
Well, it's not a rebuttal, so it doesn't sound. I don't think we're doing additional time.
Okay.
So anyway, just want to keep it consistent with the other forums that we've been doing. But I do have another question. Maybe you'll get the opportunity to address it within this other question. Maybe not. We'll see. Maybe not. So while Zoom meetings are not the same as in person, as we all know, they have allowed for more participation and attendance during COVID. what are the plans post-COVID for the town to hold hybrid meetings so that folks who can't make the meetings in person can still participate remotely? So I'd like to start with Rob on that one.
Yeah, we've kicked around a number of ideas. And, we do have some limitations. You said town meeting, right?
Mm.
Yes.
I didn't say town meeting. I said just hold. I just said the question was a general question about meetings in town, not necessarily town meeting. I can reread the question for clarity.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
While Zoom meetings are not the same as in person, they have allowed for more participation and attendance during COVID. What are the plans post-COVID for the town to hold hybrid meetings so that folks who can't make meetings in person can still participate remotely?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think we've spoken about it in any detail. There's kind of a difference of opinions on this. I really like Zoom meetings. I can see there's great advantages, and so I think that's a great question. We should look at how to have hybrid meetings. We're starting to discuss just briefly coming back in person and how that might work. But I think we should look at a hybrid version because there are so many advantages to it. For instance, this past summer, I was incapacitated for a while and I was able to make every meeting. It would have been very difficult if we hadn't had that ability, if I hadn't had the ability to attend via Zoom. So, I support that idea. I think we should pursue that.
Thank you, Rob. Yolanda?
This is such a great question, and it's something that I've been thinking about in various ways, certainly currently as chair, and talking about how we're going to go back to to in-person participation. We definitely need to look at how we can combine the in-person participation with the Zoom participation, because we have had a lot of people coming to our meetings and participating because of the Zoom. Now, a couple of things we have to think about before we can do that is we have to look at a remote participation policy, and we have to wait for some directive from the state before we can put that in place. Because currently, to do remote participation, as Rob was talking about this past summer, where he wouldn't have been able to come physically to the meeting, we currently could not allow that. He would not be able to attend remotely. The other thing is, through my work as the chair on the Metro West Regional Collaborative, we're going to working with MAPC to see how we can put these things in place so that we can do our in-person meetings
I'm sorry,
have others
Yolanda.
attend.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So,
Too much stuff.
Pam, go ahead.
Sure. I think we need to use modernized communication to increase interest and awareness in Ashland's government activities. Too many times I've heard people say that they had opinion on something and they found out too late about the vote. My ideas for modernized communication involve townwide text message reminders of important votes and initiatives. I think there are better ways for our citizens to connect with government, to the town government across to the board, from civic engagement, whether it was collected through a Facebook message, brought to the board, a public meeting. As far as using Zoom, I think there should certainly be a way that we could figure that out, to use Zoom and in person, whether somebody has a remote vote or whatever. But I think especially for our elderly and working parents, I think that using the Zoom platform is so much easier.
I'm sorry, Pam. Your time's up.
I was done.
Alrighty. So, good. The good news is that we're getting a lot of great questions here. So I'm going to pull another one that's coming in live right now. It's kind of specific, and this is for everyone. Do you know what percentage of the entire Ashland population voted for the new public safety building? How would you increase those numbers in the future and get a higher percentage of citizens to vote? Yolanda, I'd like you to start with this one.
I don't know the exact percentage. I want to say it was about 20% that supported the and you have to be careful because it's 20% of registered voters, not necessarily Ashland residents, but we had about 20% turnout supported at both town meeting, around there at both town meeting and the election. Of course, we're always looking for ways to increase participation in our elections, in our town meetings. And we are trying to we have looked at ways of, can we change when we do a town meeting so maybe more people can participate? Unfortunately, we can't do remote participation for our actual town meeting because we're open town meeting. But I'm always looking for ways, and if people have ideas of how we can increase that participation, I'm always listening and trying to figure out how we can get more people to participate in anything related to Ashland government.
Thank you, Yolanda. Rob, your thoughts?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as Yolanda said, we're constantly thinking about how to increase participation. Of course, that vote took place at a particularly difficult time during the pandemic. But I think one of the things you saw there in that vote was widespread dissemination of information through a multitude of methods, including forums and various kinds of postings. So I think that, a good number of people turned out to vote and make their voices heard on that. And, so it was probably, in terms of registered voters or residents, probably a small percentage, but that's pretty typical of the type of people who are interested enough to make the effort to educate themselves and take action. So, of course, we should do the best we can to encourage participation, but I would think that was a representative vote of the community.
Thanks, Rob. Pam.
I truly believe that it's the job of our town government and our officials to increase the interest and make people show up, make people vote. So I will echo what Yolanda mentioned about switching when town meeting is. I'm a parent of 3 small children, so making a meeting in the midweek in the evening is not always feasible. So switching a town meeting vote to maybe a Saturday at 1 p.m., which is tentatively what we have scheduled for the June town meeting. I think, why not? Well, let's try it and see if we get some increased participation. I touched on in my last answer about modernized communication, getting people involved across the board using, all of the tools that we have available to us.
Thank you, Pam. Our next question.
Can I respond, Makita?
I'm sorry, do you want to?
Can I respond?
You want to rebuttal, Rob?
Oh, is that okay? Rebuttal, is that the magic word?
Yes. Are you requesting a rebuttal?
Yes.
I'll allow it for 30
Sure.
seconds.
I just want to clarify. I think it's a great idea to try to encourage to get more people to town meeting. I was speaking more of a vote, but that's why we are going to try the Saturday in June. So to address those very issues and try to get increased turnout. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Next question. This is for all 3 of you. When you hear about something that concerns you in town, what steps would you take to see that this concern is resolved? And I'd like to start with Rob on this one.
So I think I mentioned a little bit before, one thing you could do, especially if you're not sure of how to handle something or what the best is, email the select board. It goes to all of us, plus the town manager and some town staff. And we make individual decisions about responding. And if it's viewed as seriously enough, the chair will respond. So I would encourage that as a first way of getting a perspective. We 5 are your elected representatives. And so if you don't know how to contact us individually or personally, use the select board email, or you could also email us individually, posted on the town website. So I would encourage that as a first step to get a perspective on what should be done.
Thank you, Rob. Pam.
Well, personally, as a citizen right now, not a member of an elected board, I recently did have an issue that I needed to address, a traffic issue on my street. And I did post on Facebook, Ashland Happy Board. I posted on Facebook, asked for advice, if anybody could point me in the right direction. I then reached out to our police chief, and he actually came out and he spoke to me about the traffic issue. But again, going back to this modernized communication, I don't feel as though there's any reason why a citizen of Ashland couldn't send a Facebook message to one of our select board members, and that message be brought before the committee at the next meeting and debated or assisted in the open meeting laws. And that's something that I would be open to as a select board member. Anybody can reach out to me directly.
I'm sorry, Pam, your time is up. Time is up. Yolanda.
Makita, can you clarify? Because Rob answered that question one way and Pam answered it another way. The question you asked was, when you hear about something that concerns you in town, what do you do to address it?
The question is, I'll repeat the question.
Okay.
When you hear about something that concerns you in town, what steps would you take to see that this concern is resolved?
Okay, so Rob answered it as someone who, if I personally, like Pam said, had an issue and she addressed how she handled it, and Rob recommended reaching out to us via our email address. So I'm going to try, I know I don't have much time. If I were a resident and I saw or heard something, I would bring it to the attention of someone who could handle it for me. As a select board member, if I see something, I then bring it to the town manager, and if we can bring it to a select board member, a select board meeting, I can. I'm going to use this to answer what Pam said, in that she said that if we could message someone directly on Facebook, they would respond. If anyone were ever to message me directly on Facebook, I would respond to their direct message. As elected officials, we have to be cautious of open meeting law requirements if there's just a general post on Facebook.
Thank you, Yolanda. Got another question coming in that I'd like all of you to answer. I have heard that the town is forming a design review board, question mark. What is this new board for when we already have a design review committee? And how will the voices of the citizenry be represented? When and where does it meet, and how can I attend? Yolanda, do you want to field this one first? Sure.
I don't know of any new design review committee that we're creating. The only thing I can think is that if when we were talking about it at a meeting, we said design review committee versus design review board. We are not, to my knowledge, creating any new design review board or committee. I know we may need one or two more people on our design review, but to my knowledge, there's no new design review board or committee being created. We've had one in place. They're in our process. They work with our planning board as new developments and new projects come forward. They have been in the process for as long as I've been involved in town.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Yeah.
Rob?
Yeah, pretty much echo Yolanda's comments on that. I think the idea of that committee is to try to bring different committees together and looking at the design as a whole. And, I just wanted to add, in terms of the previous question, also people had issues. We have citizens participation at every meeting, specifically for that reason. So I know some people don't want to go to meetings or attend meetings and speak up, but that's another great avenue if you're not, if you don't want to email us blindly. You can get some immediate feedback at those sessions.
Thank you, Rob. Pam, thoughts on this?
I will also echo what Yolanda and Rob said. I'd like to give an informed answer, but I don't have any information about a design review board that's forming. So if there is one forming, maybe it's in secret. I don't know. But yeah, again, I'm not sure what that is. Again, it could just be a communication error that we should probably rectify.
Thank you. Next question's coming in. This is for everyone. Currently, residents must proactively seek out meeting agendas to see if there's anything they want to participate in. But this results in many people missing out on important issues to them. How can the select board make agenda items more public or more transparent or more proactively get this information out to the public? And Pam, I'll start with you on that.
So part of my platform for running for select board is all about modernized communication and communication between boards and residents. So what I had as an idea that I did bring to our town manager is a townwide text message system. I know we all remember when we had landlines and everybody would, you get a phone call on your landline telling you about something that was going on in town. So my townwide text messaging initiative would be, a set of text messages that would go out like, hey, don't forget, there's a meeting coming up with a link to the agenda. Everybody that signs up would get them. We would definitely need to push our residents to sign up for them. But once we do that, I think that our residents would be more informed and, better able to attend meetings that they want to attend.
Thank you. Yolanda.
So a couple things happen. We post our agendas once they're ready, typically 4 to 5 days before a select board meeting. I believe school committee and planning board do the same. They get posted and attached to our meeting notes and posts on the town website. I know that our economic development director, Beth Reynolds, sends out tweets and Facebook posts and all kinds of things reminding people of upcoming meetings. I would say that, yes, people have to look proactively, but there are ways to make it easier. So you can sign up for the economic development her newsletter. You can sign up for the town manager's emails. You can get notifications when agendas go up. And I think there are ways. I know Brandy Kinsman sometimes posts our select board agendas on her Facebook page.
Thank you, Yolanda.
Yep.
Thank you for your answer. Rob?
Yeah, just echo Yolanda's responses, but I would add that, we do have a Facebook page in town that is pretty well used. And I don't see any issues with just routinely posting our agendas there, whether that would make much difference or not. But that would be, people would see it that don't normally know to look at our agendas. I think I would be in favor of something like that, just routinely putting our agenda on the Happy Board, for example, just to make it easy for people to see what the next meeting's about. And they could always direct them to the town website for more details or things like that. So.
Thank you, Rob. Next question that I have coming in has to do, and you all can answer this question, with the problem at the boat launch. The huge volume of cars at the boat launch, especially out-of-state cars and after dusk use, is a problem. What would you do to solve this issue? Yolanda, please field this one first.
This has been an issue that we've been dealing with since I have been sitting on the select board, and even before then. So there's two issues when you look at the boat launch. One, it is owned by the state. It is part of the state park. DCR is responsible for what happens there. As we know, they've had financial issues, so they don't always have people there to monitor it. There is no pass needed. There is no parking fee. So how we have had to deal with it is no parking signs have been put up around that parking lot. In the summer, our police, we've directed them to be very actively ticketing and trying to discourage people from using it. We did hear that DCR is going to be repaving it and putting some new lines in. It's an ongoing issue. We need to work with the state. We've worked with them before, and we have to continue working with them.
Thank you, Yolanda. Rob?
Yes, as Yolanda mentioned, they're going to repave it, and we have had a history of issues there. I think hopefully once it's repaved and the parking is better defined, it'll be easier for both the town of Ashland and DCR to control illegal parking. I would say to the people, we've heard from people, and the police have responded on many occasions to make sure that there's no issues with public safety vehicles getting through and no one's parking on the road. So we've done that to address it. I would say people nearby, if they see there's issues such as noise or problematic activities going on, that they should call the Ashland Police, who will respond and resolve it. It is a public boat ramp, and hopefully we'll be able to get to the point where people will use it responsibly. I use it myself. I go down there occasionally, park my car and walk around. So it's a good local resource that's also used by local people, but we just
Time's up, Rob. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
About that. Thank you. Pam?
So I think we need to be sure that the people that are using the boat launch are using it for its intended purpose. They're parking there, they are launching their boats. I understand that it's a town, it's a state property. So the town has, limited control over what happens at the boat launch. But I agree that with the paving and the more defined lines, sometimes signs don't work. Sometimes people don't listen, but we do rely on our residents that are in that area. So to call the police if you do see something, say something, I guess, and so that we can make sure that the people that want to use that boat launch have the opportunity to park their car back in, and it's not used for someone who should be parking up at the beach to use the walking path.
Thank you, Pam. Next question that's come in. Actually, there are a few questions about this, so I'll pick one of them. This is for everyone, can you speak to any goals for maintaining Ashland character in its buildings? So, Rob, can you start with that question?
Yeah, that's quite a question. The goals. So I mentioned before the downtown. So that's a spot that does have pretty characteristic buildings and building styles, or at least point us in a direction. So we're looking at the current redevelopment of 110 Main Street, so that's going to be a key project if we can keep the kind of aesthetic there and improve while also improving the site. So, I would just remind people that there is a zoning review going on that we're going to be looking at it, hopefully at a think town meeting. There may be often there's issues with these, they get withdrawn, but that's part of what's going on. So I think, we've heard, it's important for people to make their voices heard on this, that we want to retain certain elements of certain traditional elements of Ashland as we develop. So that's certainly an important goal.
Thank you, Rob. Pam, can you go next, please?
So to speak to Rob's point, Rob's brought up the Main Street building. I have a lot of feelings on this project. I actually met with our town manager recently, and we had a lively discussion about the project. And the developer that brought his proposal forward. And my expression to Michael was that the facade of the building, the granite building, should be saved. We should try to figure out how we can build a building with commercial and even residential areas that's going to benefit Ashland. But the town of Natick did it at the Buttercup restaurant. And I think that we could do it here with this project as well.
Thank you, Pam. Yolanda?
Thank you. That's a really good question. I think that I mean, for me, as I sit where I am as a select board member, and we don't have as much say over some of this, is that we want to keep Ashland's character. Is it going to be the character of 50 or 75 years ago? No, it's going to be updated. I know our planning board is currently looking at updating the downtown zoning. They did it a number of years ago with some code-based zoning. They are looking at that again, and they're hoping to bring that forward to town meeting in June. And I think input from our residents as to what the goal is and what that character is, I think it's a balance between working with what the developer and or owner of the building is looking to do, as well as what we want Ashland to look and feel like.
Thank you, Yolanda. I have another question for all of you. What are the top 3 issues that Ashland will be facing over the coming year, in your opinion? And Yolanda, I'd like to start with you on that.
I get to keep going first. So I think the top 3 issues that Ashland's going to be dealing with over the next year is recovering financially from the hit from COVID. We had to dip into our rainy day fund to do our current budget. We are looking to make a change for that for the next fiscal year. We are looking forward to the influx of some federal dollars to help us with that. I think the other issue is helping our businesses recover from the COVID hit. Certainly our restaurants and some of our service industries and some of our smaller businesses. And then I think the third issue for me personally is increasing communication and finding the best way to work with citizens. It's something I've worked on before as I've brought different initiatives forward. But I think as we move out of COVID and we have some big capital projects and other things that we're working on, improving and working
Thanks,
on
Yolanda.
communication.
You're at time. Thank you
Yep.
so much. Pam, top 3.
Sure. Thanks for that question. Ashland's rapid growth, I think, is one of the most important issues facing the town right now. I would look towards how we could slow some of it down without negating the benefits that growth brings. Again, to touch on what Yolanda said, the budget took a hit this year for sure, as it did across the country. We need to be mindful this year that the funds that we've received from the state are one-time funds, and we need to use them effectively. And then, the third that I would say is recovering our small businesses. And, we've seen a number of small businesses close in our downtown. So bringing those back, either putting some funds into the small businesses of our community. That's what Ashland is all about, is our small businesses. And I think that's going to be an issue that we're going to have to be facing is small businesses that are struggling.
Thank you, Pam.
I would say, recovery from COVID for the businesses and residents, and 2, the budget, both the recovery, but the use of the potential new American Recovery Funds for taking on infrastructure projects, and that'll be a key activity going on over the next year, how those funds and probably infrastructure funds are going to be used. And I would look at mass transit and water and sewer projects to keep our water and sewer fees down, and to address some of the environmental issues. And the third thing I would say is sustainability and climate change. We're on a very tight schedule. We should continue with the net zero implementation. That should continue to be a priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. I think we've got time to squeeze in one more question before closing remarks. And I'm pulling this from a live question from a viewer right now. And it does have to do with green space. Recently, the Tree Bylaw Committee couldn't seem to find support in town due to the cost to developers and the town. What would you each do to revisit this as green space and planting trees has been found to be important to human health and to help alleviate climate change effects. Pam, can you go first on this one?
Sure. I recently saw that we had a high school project out planting trees. So that I think is a great opportunity for us to get some more to get more trees in town, especially that it will probably contribute to their community service. But additionally, you know, the Valentine estate that we're working on right now, I think is an opportunity for our town to really utilize some green space, not develop it, not overdevelop it, but to use that estate as a project. You know, I'm excited to see that come to fruition. I'm excited to hear what the committees come up with as you know, uses for that property. I think that we need to work collaboratively, especially in that project with the Valentine family. And I think that that would be a good opportunity for our town to save some green space.
Thank you, Pam. Rob, please go ahead.
Sure. Well, I'm sorry to hear that the tree bylaw, or at least the people, the supporters, think it hasn't been supported. I think one of the things to do with that is to work with the Sustainability Committee to help move that forward. I'm not sure what kind of feedback they're referring to. It certainly wouldn't have come from me or any conversations that I'm aware of at the board. So I would encourage them to continue with that. In terms of, you know, so, you know, I just want to say something about quickly that we are approaching build out, and it's very important that we look at remaining open spaces and have a plan for them. We've done a lot of preservation of open spaces, but there's more to do. And this is a key time in our history as we approach build out. So I think that's an important concept to keep in mind. And that's what I would support doing, as I have in the past.
Thank you, Rob. Yolanda.
Our tree bylaw committee has done a lot of work, and I would echo Rob's comment that they should continue working with our sustainability committee. Yes, there was a tree planting project that one of our science teachers brought forward. They were able to get 50 trees from DCR that were offered to members of our community. And I think it's a balance working with developers to ensure that they maintain as much green space as they're developing parcels. As Rob said, we are getting very close to build out. And as we look at our housing production plan, we can look at where that green space is and try to maintain as much as possible, but working with the owners of that land so that if they do decide to develop it, as much of the trees that are on it are kept, and or they put some funding to put trees in other locations.
Thank you, Yolanda. And we are right up against closing statements. So we'll be hearing from each one of the candidates for 1 minute. We're going in reverse order of initial introduction. So that means that, Rob, you are first. Please proceed with your closing statement.
Oh, thank you. So I campaigned 3 years ago on the need to create a cohesive vision for our community, which would preserve the best of our past, focus on the quality of life, and build a sustainable future. Together, we've made a great deal of progress, protecting key open spaces, mandating affordable housing, building up our public safety staff, and embarking on important projects as the public safety building, Mendez School replacement, Route 126, and the downtown. After many years of planning, we will soon break ground on the first segment of the Ashland Upper Charles Trail. I have demonstrated over these years the ability to advocate and work effectively with citizens, elected officials, and town staff to accomplish these goals. Looking ahead, we must continue our sustainability efforts by passing a net zero plan and follow through on its recommendations. I continue to be concerned with the impact of the Eversource pipeline project, including its role in increasing greenhouse gases and accelerating climate change. Eversource has not responded to key questions, and if reelected, I pledge to continue to fight.
Thank you, Rob. Your time is up.
Project. Thank you.
Pam, you're next.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who's joined us tonight on Facebook and my fellow candidates. Makita, thank you for a thoughtful discussion. I'd like to wrap up by saying that I feel strongly that this board needs a new voice, a new set of views, a new way to approach issues. I'm not a politician by any means, but I do believe there's an opportunity in government for younger voices to shine through and new ideas to be put forth. I think this year marks that opportunity. I'm not afraid to ask tough questions and get the responses back to the residents who are looking for them. You know, it's the job of our community leaders to get people out at meetings and encourage citizen engagement. My promise to the citizens of Ashland is that even though we may not agree on every issue, I will be an ever-present ear to listen and a collaborative voice on the select board.
Thank you, Pam. And Yolanda.
I too want to thank We Love Ashland and WACA-TV for organizing these candidates forums. Thank you to you, Makita, for the moderating, and to my fellow select board candidates, Pam and Rob, and to all candidates who have stepped up to run for town office. And finally, thank you to you, our residents who have joined us either via Facebook or watching this live on WACA-TV. You are why we are sitting here, or why I am sitting here. I have always considered myself a public servant, working with the best interest of Ashland in mind. During my 9 years as a member of the board, we have brought positive change to our financial status. We've moved forward many capital projects. We've improved our working relationship with other members and other boards, but there's still more to do. So we still have work to do. So please consider me when casting your vote so I can continue working for all of you, the residents of Ashland. Thank you for watching, and thanks for having us.
Thank you, Yolanda. And thank you, candidates, for participating in tonight's forum. I'd like to thank the sponsors of tonight's forum, We Love Ashland and WACA-TV. But most of all, I'd like to thank you, the residents of Ashland, who have participated in this forum, given us so many great and thoughtful questions. And of course, we'll end up voting for these candidates that we've had a chance to have some great conversations with over the past few nights. I'd like to remind everybody that all of the information that you need to be able to vote in the town election is up on the town website. So please visit it. There are many different ways that you can get that done. Best way to find out, town website. And once again, I just want to thank everyone for tuning in. Don't forget to vote. Don't forget to stay active. On behalf of We Love Ashland, WACA-TV, and all the candidates that you've met tonight, thanks for watching.